Hi, I'm Amy, your host at SewInformed. Now, some of you get our sewing classes. On our Serger portion today, we're going to be doing a little bit of kind of the same thing but different. We're going to be talking about 60 degrees wedges and 60-degree angles. We're going to be sewing with strips, and we're going to be doing some Serger flat locking with metallic thread. Two words that normally some people wouldn't put together, but we're going to challenge ourselves today. Metallic thread in our Serger and doing a flat locking technique. We're going to be using flat locking and our 60-degree triangle ruler to kind of make this hexagon table mat. Now the flat locking is this little metallic row of stitching right here. It's because we totally pull the seam flat. There's no overlapping, there's no seam allowance. It lays flat, but it's also an awesome decorative technique that you can use with your serger. So I just went to my sewing room, I gathered up my reds, greens, it doesn't matter what holiday, or just match your house. We all kind of sew in the same color family all the time. We have our favorites. And mine happens to be turquoise. And the girls at the store say if I order one more bolt of turquoise fabric, they're going to throw me out. So today I'm working in reds and greens, getting ready for the holidays here in Western Pennsylvania. So grab up your scraps. We're going to use a lightweight fusible interfacing to hold our flat locking together. Working flat locking with knits is totally different. We don't need the interfacing, but with cottons and wovens, we do. So I'm going to go through serger setup and how to get ready so you can flat lock at home too. Okay, so I'm here with my serger. Now, it's kind of irrelevant what serger I'm working with, but my serger has built-in stitch functions. So we're going to set that aside because some of you have these huge computerized sergers. You push a button and you choose flat lock and it sets it for flat lock. But you need to understand what makes a flat lock. So if your automation isn't perfect, you know how to change it. So up here in my tensions, this is my left needle, my right needle, my upper looper, and my lower looper, just to put some orientation into it. This is a 3-thread function. I'm going to be using my left needle because I want a wide stitch, my upper looper, and my lower looper. Because my serger is automated, when I choose number 3, flat lock automatically comes up internally. The tensions change, not so much on the dials. So normally, if every day you serge, you're on normals across the board. What makes a flat lock is the total opposite of what we never want to see in our serger. When that needle thread pops open and your seam isn't tight, that's sort of flat locking. So we're going to take your needle tension all the way down to 0. You're going to take your upper looper tension all the way down to 0. And then you may have to increase your lower looper just a little bit. With that said, even though you're at zeros here, these pre-tension clips, and because your thread rides down into the tension assembly, you may have to take your serger thread, let's see if I can get it out of here, and lay it out of here. And normally what I would do is I would put a piece of like package tape right here, just regular package wrapping tape, so the thread doesn't get pulled down into your tension assembly. If zeros don't work, then you need to lift these out and put a little piece of tape across so it don't go down inside your tensions. And that's what causes flat locking to open up. Sometimes they use a form of flat locking when they do hems on knits, and that's another class down the road. But because mine's automatically set, I'm putting mine all almost back to normal, where it was doing well. Now I have regular thread in my left needle and my right needle, and I have metallic thread in my upper looper. And I know it's going to be hard to see, but what you're going to see, your upper looper thread is what you're going to see the most of. The white thread is going to be your needle thread on your left and your lower looper on the right. So if you don't want white, like I have a little bit of white in here, I totally would put red in here if I didn't need you to see it, because all we want to do is see the pretty stitch. We want to float that stitch, where the only thing we see is metallic thread. Now when I say the word metallic thread and either sewing or serger, it kind of gives everybody a little bit of angst. So the thread I have up here, This is artistic metallic thread, and I say metallic, but it's polyester. It's polyester, so it's not a full metal thread. It's almost impossible now to find a full metal thread anymore. This is Robinson Anton. This is my other favorite thread. These work at high speeds. They don't break as often. So don't go to the bargain bin for your metallic thread. I will tell you, this is somewhere around $25 US. This is around $15 US. And then Madeira is probably my third choice in thread that's also a very good thread. So don't skimp on metallic. Now when we set up for Flatlock, and again my automation was taken care of, but your tension was down to 0. Metallic thread is very coarse and sometimes creates its own tension. So you're definitely probably going to have to block off your tension assembly. I'm not going to do anything else differently with my metallic thread, so feel free to use it. Because the metallic thread goes through the eye of the looper. That's just my heat press, by the way. Sorry for the beep. And it comes through the eye of the looper. This eye is bigger than the eye of your needle, so we can handle heavier threads without any grief. So my stitch length is close. So I want to have a little more filled in. So my stitch length is like at 2. My differential feet is normal. And my stitch width, or my blade bite, is around 6. And you can decide how wide you want it, thicker or thinner. It's your call. Okay, I have my strips of my cotton fabric, and then they're not interfaced. We're going to do that after we're done to hold all that stitching in place. Because flat locking is really loose, once you cut it, it has a tendency to unsew itself and kind of undo itself, so it's a little tricky. So we want to make sure that we do secure the back. So we're going to sew strips together. We've always sewn right sides together. It makes total sense to us. But if I want to expose that upper looper, we're going to sew wrong sides together. I know that makes no sense. And I'm just going to skim the blade, and because this fabric is thin, I don't have to worry about the thickness when I pull my fabric pieces over. Is there enough space or enough give in the thread to let it lay flat? This cotton fabric works really well. If we were going to do this with fleece, heavy knits, then we need to sew a little bit to the left of our blade, and I'll show you that shortly. But let me show you the 2 sides of Flatlock. Okay, remember, wrong sides together, and I'm just skimming the edge of my fabric. If your fabric back here starts to kind of buckle and pull a little bit, if you have a long tail when you start, you'll be able to flatten it out. Every serger is a little bit different. So you can see mine gives a little bit, so I'm going to tug on it. Now you want to see in the back, if you look at the back of this, this has this real deep V right here. There's nothing in between. The edge of this goes all the way to the outside of my fabric, and it's very even, and that's what you want to see, that big deep V, and you know your flat locking is well underway. So with metallic thread, I do chain off a little slower. As you can see, it's a little pucker. I'm just going to pull a little bit. Now here's where the magic happens. I have that deep V in the back. I have the metallic on the front, and this is where flat locking came from. When I tug, see how it pulls the seam perfectly flat? We use this for elastics, attaching laces. There's lots of uses for it, but right now we're using it as a decorative piece. So this is called the loop side of a flat lock. This is called the ladder side, and you may recognize the ladder on sportswear, hemming, that kind of thing. So we're going to sew all our strips together and pull them so they're nice and flat, and then just give them a little press. And then here's what I did here. This is what it looks like when I have them all done. And then I fuse that lightweight interfacing on the back. If you don't do this with a woven, what happens is one little pull of this ladder, you can see it's already starting to come unraveled. So this is always a safety precaution. Now we're going to do maybe a little top stitching on this that would hold it, but I always use a lightweight interfacing on the back of my flat locking on wovens. So once you get your strip sets done, and I would do the whole width of fabric, do the whole 44. These sizes are irrelevant. The order is irrelevant. It's whatever is pleasing to your eye and however wide you want your wedge to be. This is the 60-degree triangle we're going to be using. So depending on how big of a triangle you want, that's how many strips you have to have or how much width you have to accommodate this. So once you have everything flat locked perfectly, then we're going to go to the mat and we're going to cut our 60-degree wedges, and I'm going to show you how to flat locking the pieces together. All right, I have my strips ready to go, and I have my 60-degree triangle. Now this little blue tape is just so my eyeballs know where to look every time I cut, because that's the key. You want your edge to be the same every time you use your ruler. Now I'm going to be cutting face up, face down, face up, face down, so they all fit together, and that gives me this random look that I have here. You can plan it so you can have where all of these are the same on the inside. It requires a lot more fabric, and you have to cut all one direction with a lot of waste. So today we're just kind of doing a scrappy look. So I have the edge of my 60-degree triangle here, or wedge here, and I'm going to cut up one side, and I'm going to cut up the other side, get rid of my waste. And before I do anything, I go like this, just because I'll forget when the phone rings, the dog barks, what I'm supposed to be doing next. So I'm just going to line that up on that straight edge. I'm going to cut, and I'm going to flip and line it up on my mark and my edge, and I'm going to be short for my third one, doggone it. We're going to have a hole in our hexagon table mat. And get rid of my scraps. So here I have half done, right? So now I want to play to see which way they go. And you want to make sure when you do your strip sets that they are all the same. If you're doing more than one strip set, they need to be the same width of each of the strips, or you'll be in trouble. So now when I flat lock those all together, except for my salvage here, which was a mistake on my part for not making my strip sets long enough, I'm sure I have red magic markers somewhere in my box I can cover that up with. So we want to sew these together. We're going to sew 3 and set aside, and we're going to sew 3, and then we're going to put the 3 together. You're not going to have a perfect shape here in the center unless you do what I talked about earlier, where you're cutting all the same wedges with a lot of fabric waste. So I'm going to flat lock these together so you can see you can intersect flat locking, and you can see it's already starting to pull a little bit, my metallic thread. That's why we use the interfacing. So let me go back to my serger here. I'm just going to do this real quick. And remember, wrong sides together, which is so much harder to remember when you're sewing. And I'm just going to tuck my tail in here, just so my sides are up against my blade, and my needle is just to the point of my wedge. And again, I'm just going to skim the blade. I'm going to go nice and slow because I don't want them to shift. Okay, I finished stitching together my first 2 wedges, and I'm just going to, you want to pull them flat before you do your next wedge. And if you don't do that, up here at the top, you're not going to be able to lay them down as nicely. And remember, wrong sides together. Whoops, there we go, almost. It is such a habit to try to remember something different. I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to put this in here. And if you don't want it to shift, we're not big pinners with our serger, but you can put a pin in the interior here so it doesn't shift, but you have no chance of hitting your pin. And that interfacing also keeps your fabric from stretching, you know, when you're pulling. And you get everything nice and flat. And you can, you know, I run it through my press. You could run it through your iron. So now we have our two sections. And you can see a little bit of a pattern happening. And just sometimes happens kind of randomly. You can do it with some thought process to it. Sometimes if I really have to think hard about it, I'll even sew some colored paper together and cut out my wedges that way so I get an understanding of what's happening. The difference between here and here, where these strips were wider than the ones I originally started with. So, you know, it should be, if things go well, it should line up like this, but it's, again, this is scrappy and I didn't pay attention, so, you know, that's my fault. So we're going to sew these right down the middle. And chances are nobody would know that but you anyhow. But it's all about how much time and thought you want to put into it to get everything to line up perfectly. I don't mind that because chances are there's going to be a candle, there's going to be a candy dish, there's going to be something on there that's not going to even get noticed. And I say any day you're sewing with your serger and you're using it is a good day. So all my tails here in the middle, I'm just going to pull them out so the blade catches them. Look at that. That's beautiful. See, even where all that intersection is, it just pulled so nice. A little bit of pressing. Everything's going to be flat and perfect. Yeah, so it's a little wonky in the middle, but it looks kind of cool as it goes around. It also looks kind of spider webbish too. You know, you could use some spooky Halloween fabrics. Now to finish this, you know, I have this hexagon here. And so the easiest way to finish it would just to be put another piece of fabric underneath of it and just use the same, go to a 3-thread wide stitch, which means basically all I'm doing is putting my tensions back to normal and then just doing an edge finish. And it would be beautiful, just something to go under a lamp or protect your table. It would be a great placemat. It's nice and large. So you've played with 60 degrees. You've played with metallic thread. We have flat locked. And I think that was pretty awesome because the more you serger, the more you nurture. Okay, so the more you sew, the more you know. I tried. Okay, one more time. The more you know, the more you sew. There we go, I got it.